السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، نستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. Praise belongs to Allah, the one and only God, the provider for entire universe. His whom we seek assistance from, and guidance from, and forgiveness from. In Him we believe, in Him we place our trust. Whomsoever Allah guides, there is no misguidance for that person. And similarly, whomsoever He allows misguided, there's no one who can guide that person or those people. We testify that none deserves worship except Allah alone, and we testify that Muhammad, to whom the Qur'an was sent, is His messenger and servant. May peace and blessings be upon him. The Qur'an gives maybe 2 or 3 very strong statements on the subject that I'm about to discuss. And it tells us about religion in the sight of God. As far as the Qur'an is concerned, or as far as God is concerned according to the Qur'an, there is only one religion acceptable in the sight of God. In the deen 'inda Allah Islam. The religion with Allah is Islam. The religion with Allah is Islam. So, what comes into the people's minds when they hear the word Islam, or when they hear the word Muslim? What comes into people's minds is usually, Osama bin Laden, 9/11, or a store, or a movie, True Lies, movie True Lies, or The Kingdom. So many different images come into people's minds when they hear the word Islam, or when they hear the word Muslim. The reality is far greater than any of those images that people have. So what is Islam? Islam is an Arabic word that means submission to God. That's all it means. Submission or surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is a Muslim? A Muslim is a person who does the act of submission to Allah. A person who does the act of sin or submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This person is called a Muslim. Or you want to say a female Muslim, Muslimah. Muslim, Muslimah. So, you know that Jesus was a Muslim? Jesus was a Muslim. And, when you tell people this, sometimes they get angry. Sometimes they feel insulted. Like, how could Jesus be a Muslim? That doesn't make no sense. How can Jesus be a Muslim? But, think about it. Did Jesus teach people to submit to God? Did Jesus teach people to submit to God? Did He teach people to love God? Did He Himself submit to God? The only answer can be to that is yes. No matter what opinion a person has about Jesus, that's the only answer you can come up with, is that He saw Himself as a person who submitted to God. And in Arabic you say that's a Muslim. Very simple. The most important commandment, according to the scripture or the records of the Jews and the Christians, is what is called in Hebrew the Shema. The Shema. And that is the statement. It says, listen to this, or hear this, O Israel. The Lord your God is one God. Your God is one. La ilaha illallah. The exact same thing. La ilaha illallah is the most important teaching or most important commandment given in the scriptures of the Jews and the Christians. So my point is that Islam is found throughout Scripture, not just the Quran, but Islam is found throughout the world Scriptures. So if Islam is found throughout the world Scriptures, when I say world Scriptures, I mean the Jewish Scripture, the Christian Scripture, or even I'll extend a little bit, the Vedas, the Hindu Scripture. If Islam is found in those books, how does the Quran fit in? What is the purpose of having the Quran? Why are we so different from our neighbors in terms of how we worship? We go into a building and we take off our shoes before we come into the prayer hall. And we prostrate on the ground and we recite certain texts. Why are we so different from our neighbors? 14 centuries ago, 6 centuries after the time of Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, God sent forth communication through an angel, through the angel Gabriel, to a man named Muhammad. And this communication was preserved in what we call the Qur'an. And it was a communication that lasted or was given over a period of 22 years in the life of Muhammad alayhi salam. So in this communication, or this book, the Qur'an, that was given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the final prophet, the last and final prophet, this book tells us that all the great prophets, all the great messengers, all the great teachers were all proclaiming the same, essentially, the same message. Perhaps they spoke in a different way, but the essential message is the same. I gave you the example of the Shema. This book, the Quran, also informs us that there has been a great deal of confusion about important issues. Among those issues are the nature of the divine, as well as human nature, and the status of Scripture. This book, the Quran, this book seeks to clarify such confusion. And obviously it teaches us that Jesus alayhi salam would pray. In other words, he would supplicate God, he would make dua to God. And it actually gives us logical examples to bring these points home. And in one example, I don't want to go off on this for a long time, but in one example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the status of Jesus alayhi salam. He says, مَا الْمَسِيحُ عِيسَى ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ, that the Messiah, in other words, Jesus, the Messiah, the son of Mary, was nothing more than a messenger. وَقَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ, many messengers died before him. There have been many messengers before Jesus, and they all died before him. وَأُمُّهُ صِدِّيقَةٌ كَانَا يَأْكُلَانِ الطَّعَامَ, his mother of Jesus, was an honest woman. She was a sincere woman. She was a virtuous woman. And they both used to eat food. This is what I'm coming to. They both used to eat food. كَانَا يَأْكُلَانِ الطَّعَامَ انظر كيف نبين لهم الآيات. Look, Allah is saying, look at how we make our signs clear to them. انظر كيف نبين لهم الآيات. So if Jesus alayhi salam and his mother, Mary, if they both had to eat food, what does that tell us? How can they be divine if they had to eat food like everybody else? How could they be divine? If they had to survive by eating like everybody else. So the Quran is a dhikr, a reminder. But a reminder of what? It reminds us of what came before it. And the Quran tells us that in other places. I believe it's on this wall right here. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ. A Muslim or someone who believes in the Quran is the one who believes what has been given to the Prophet in the form of the Quran. It wasn't given before him. So the Quran is a reminder of what came before it. The Bible also shows that Jesus prayed. So this is something that's not only given in the Quran, it's also given in the Bible. So in terms of the Quran being dhikr, it means that the Quran serves as a re-emphasis on facts that have been overlooked or forgotten